Welcome everybody. Today we are going to go into one of my favorite authors, Oscar Wilde. He is a brilliant writer and he's able to include and really make his short stories beautiful, with a lot of imagination, a lot of creativity, but also with lifelong lessons, which is amazing. And today we're gonna delve into the story of the selfish giant. I'm sure we're gonna do a Spanglish, but I would like to welcome Jack Sagot so that he can guide us through the story of the selfish giant.
Thank you. Very nice, very kind, very kind. So I came to 63 years old yesterday. From now on...
We have a birthday boy today.
I was born on the day of Independence Day. And then I don't have told you this, but my mother, when I was 3, 4, 5 years old, she used to take me to see the parades, the desfiles, ¿verdad? Ahora ya no se hacen desfiles, but in those times they were important, you know? Drums and trumpets and colombinas and all sorts of things. So my mom would take me and to see and she would always say, "Look at this, you, my son. This is how much the world loves you. All this is because of my little baby's birthday. This is for you. Look how much the world loves you and celebrates you." And so she did that, which I believed until I was like 20. No, I was like 5 years old, I believe. I still believe that. I don't know if that was good or bad. Maybe she only succeeded in molding a megalomaniac personality, you know. But I would like to believe that didn't happen, you know. It was very sweet. I always remember that. It was beautiful. That feeling was beautiful. So here we are, together for the most beautiful reason imaginable, to talk about Oscar Wilde. Now, do please remember always, Oscar Wilde was not British. He was Irish. He was born in Dublin in 1854. People tend to imagine that everything comes from England, you know, but no, he was Irish. And that's important because his fairy tales, and this is a fairy tale essentially, are very much inspired in the Irish folklore, which is very rich. It's very important, you know. Giants, that's pure Irish folklore, you know, and all sorts of things. And so he was Irish, just like James Joyce was Irish, you know. So, and what a wonderful writer. He was born in 1854. 1854, he died in 1900, you know, lived 46 years. And we all pretty much know what his life story is, you know, very tragic thing, because he was homosexual. And he was homosexual in the worst time you could possibly be homosexual, who was the Victorian British morale. Very rigorous, very full of interdictions, you know, of prohibitions, you know. And so it was a bad place and a bad time to be homosexual. I mean, had Oscar Wilde emigrated to France and lived in Paris, he would have been received like a king. Everybody was gay. André Gide, Paul Verlaine, Arthur Rimbaud, everybody, Marcel Proust, Maurice Ravel, everybody. So he would have found a very congenial environment, but not in London, where he had most of his career. He was very, very successful writer. He was the man of the town. I mean, see, he was a playwright. He was a novelist. He was a storyteller. He was a poet. He wrote some essays, you know, that he's remembered for his playwrights, you know, the importance of being earnest, which is a game, you know, is a game, because the importance of being earnest is translated la importancia de llamarse Ernesto, but the play actually, it's the importance of being earnest. Earnest means being honest. being sincere, being honest, earnest. But also by paronomasia, earnest means Ernesto. So the importance of being earnest, and indeed the protagonist is called Ernesto. So he kind of plays with us a little bit, That double meaning is lost in translation. La importancia de llamarse Ernesto. Punto, no puedes. Hay cosas que son intraducibles, ¿verdad? Completamente. The other day I was thinking about the movie Stanley Kubrick. I have seen it 25 times and I still don't understand it, but I think it's a wonderful movie. Eyes Wide Shut. You cannot translate that in Spanish. How can you translate Eyes Wide Shut?
Ojos bien cerrados.
Ojos bien cerrados, pero es que no. Eyes wide significa ampliamente, no bien ampliamente cerrados.
But it goes wide open. That's the expression.
Yeah, sure.
So when they change it to wide shut,
you create a contradiction. You create a contradiction in the sense, Eyes can only be wide open. They cannot be wide shut. They could be totally shut, completely shut, but not wide shut. Ojos anchamente cerrados. That doesn't work at all, And so some things do. In any case, Oscar Wilde, yes, well, sure, he was a wonderful man, had tremendous wit, tremendous mordacity, tremendous sense of humor. He was funny. He had great ingenuity. He was wonderful with little phrases and little things, Oh, I'm very intelligent, he used to say. I'm so intelligent that sometimes I cannot understand a single word of the things I say. I'm so intelligent that sometimes I cannot understand anything of what I say. People talk bad about me. Well, that's great. That's great. People talk bad about you. There's nothing wrong with that. The worst thing would be if you're not talked at all, if nobody talks about you. That would be a tragedy. But people talking bad about you, that's great. That's great, he used to say. And he has lots of phrases of that kind.
Bad publicity is good publicity.
Yeah, exactly. So tremendous sense of humor, tremendous wit, a great observer of society's, costumes and style of living, the bourgeois society in London. He was a hero in London because Irish was kind of a provincial place, but he was tremendously successful in London. The importance of being earnest, El abanico de Lady Windermere, El marido ideal are tremendously entertaining plays. And they remain very, very, very interesting nowadays. Then he wrote Picture of Dorian Gray as a novelist, has been brought to the movies many times. Still the best one is the one from 1945, black and white, with Herb Hatfield, who was a very handsome guy playing Dorian Gray. It had to be very handsome because Dorian Gray was a dandy. George Sanders playing the role of, anyways, wonderful cat. Angela Lansbury, La Reportera del Crimen, very young, appears in that Dorian Gray. If you can avail yourself, ignore the most recent versions. And it is in YouTube. It is, you can Google it, it is there. Wonderful version, wonderful. That story, that movie inspired me when I was very young. I was like 8, 9 years old. Inspired me to create my own Dorian Gray portrait. Lily, can you believe that? So I had an enormous cartulina. So I draw a painting of myself. So with each little misdemeanor I committed, I added some verruga or cicatriz or stain of blood or things. I kept adding monstrous things. So after a while, it was a horrendous portrait. I had it inside of the closet. My brother was scared, horrified. He could not bear that, So I kept making the portrait uglier and uglier and uglier. I say, well, I found the experiment to be very good, wonderful, to be emulated. So, well, I'm going to draw my own, the picture of Jacques Sagot. And as I misbehave, We would keep adding horrible things to the face. It ended being horrendous, just horrendous. It was carrying for me. And one day, my grandmother discovered it. What? What is this kind of horrible aberration? Oh my God, no wonder you have nightmares by night. I'm going to destroy this. Forget about it. A healthy young boy should not be writing this kind of thing. You have to be sick to do something like that. So she destroyed the painting, and I never again. I could now perhaps attempt a new experiment in that sense, It's a beautiful experiment because it blends both dimensions of human nature, ethics and aesthetics. As my ethical behavior corrupts itself, the aesthetical aspect corrupts itself as well. One is they're in a correlative relationship. One is the mirror of the other. So it allows you to identify ugly behavior with ugly appearance. Now, it's an interesting thing, It's an interesting thing. So I keep doing that. Anyways, so he wrote, he got The Ghost of Canterbury. That's another little novel, if you will. And he wrote, in 1888, he wrote a collection of short stories called The Happy Prince and Other Stories. And it is from that collection that we took The Selfish Giant, 1888. Again, he was born in 1854. He died in 19 in Paris, in exile, poor, decadent, horrible. It was a horrible thing, but he was sent to jail. He was sent to jail for a couple of years for gross indecency. That was the name of his sin, gross indecency. He was taken to trial. That trial was very famous, Yes, sure, he was homosexual, and he was totally, blindly, stupidly in love with Sir Alfred Douglas, called Bosie. So he adored Bosie, and I deplore that because Bosie was a son of a bitch, basically. He was cruel, exploitative, selfish, horrible thing. It was Bosie who practically pushed Oscar Wilde into penally accusing his father, the Marquis of Queensberry, the father of Alfred Douglas, a.k.a. Bosie. So the son hated the father. So he pushed Oscar Wilde into suing his own father, and Oscar Wilde stupidly did so. Well, he could not prove anything against the Marquis of Queensberry, and the worst is that the Marquis of Queensberry counterattacked with a suit against Oscar Wilde, accusing him for immoral behavior, and then Oscar Wilde lost. 2 years in prison, he lost his wife and his 2 children, for he was bisexual. He never saw them again. He lost the copyright over his own works. He was tremendously popular, and the libraries, for instance, knew that a work by him always would sell very well. So they kept selling his books, but without the name Oscar Wilde, just like anonymous, like written by nobody. And so they kept making profit out of his work in an almost vampirical, awful way. He was so mistreated, He lost his little library that contained thousands of beautiful books, many of them autographed by great writers: Henry James, Marcel Proust, André Gide, H.G. Wells, D.H. Lawrence, all the great British writers of the time. He lost his reputation. He lost everything a man can lose. He lost. It was terrible. So he spent 2 years in the prison of reading, and he wrote a famous letter. He wrote a poem, The Ballad of the Prison of Reading, La Balada de la Cárcel de Reading. And then he wrote another thing while he was in prison called De Profundis. That's Latin, means De Profundis, from the bottom of my sea, of my being, De Profundis, where he talked about his life and the injustice of his condemnation and all that. He's buried in Paris in the Père Lachaise cemetery in a beautiful, huge tomb, kind of. He's not below the earth. It's kind of, como sobre una tumba enorme, como en alto más bien, casi que fuera un santuario. And then people just covered it with graffiti, but loving graffiti, Once all the gay movement exploded, that became almost a place of pilgrimage, with all sorts of messages, loving messages. So the authorities of the Père Lachaise had no choice but to cover the whole tomb by glass. So it's covered by glass, So over the glass, you cannot write. And if you write, it's very easy to erase it, But wonderful man. There are entire collections of his short phrases, of his epigrams, of his little things, He was wonderful at that. I wish I had more. I should have brought some, because he was wonderful at that, at creating little phrases that were piercing and sharp and humorous and critical as well, So that's our great Oscar Wilde. So we're going to read the story that's probably the most famous he ever wrote. But I was listening today to several actors reading this story. My God, what a beautiful story. This ought to be the most beautiful story ever written, in my humble opinion. I mean, there are stories that are that have more shock value, that are more whatever you want. But in terms of sheer poetry, I don't think one can write anything more beautiful than this, frankly. Quite frank. So we're going to read it, okay? So we should have there we go. Here we go. The selfish giant. Every afternoon, as they were coming from school, the children used to go and play in the giant's garden. It was a large, lovely garden with soft green grass. Here and there over the grass stood beautiful flowers like stars, and there were 12 peach trees that in the springtime broke out into delicate blossoms of pink and pearl, and in the autumn bore rich fruit. The birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to them. "How happy we are here," they cried to each other. One day, the giant came back. He had been to visit his friend, the Cornish ogre, and had stayed with him for 7 years. After the 7 years were over, he had said all that he could say, for his conversation was limited, and he determined to return to his own castle. Well, that's comedic, So he talks for 7 years with the ogre of Cornouailles, and he stopped because his conversation was limited. I mean, for a giant, 7 years of conversation is very little, So that's kind of ironic. After the 7 years were over, he had said all he had to say, for his conversation was limited, and he determined to return to his own castle. When he arrived, he saw the children playing in the garden. "What are you doing here?" he cried in a very gruff voice, and the children ran away. "My own garden is my own garden," said the giant. "Anyone can understand that, and I will allow nobody to play it by myself." So he built a high wall around it and put a notice board. "Trespassers will be prosecuted." He was a very selfish giant. The poor children had now nowhere to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones, and they did not like it. They used to wander round the high wall when their lessons were over and talk about the beautiful garden inside. "How happy we were there," they said to each other. Then the spring came, and all over the country there were little blossoms and little birds. Only in the garden of the selfish giant it was still winter. The birds did not care to sing in it as there were no children, and the trees forgot to blossom. Once a beautiful flower put its head out from the grass, but when it saw the notice board, it was so sorry for the children that it slipped back into the ground again and went off to sleep. The only people who were pleased were the snow and the frost. Spring has forgotten this garden, they cried, so we will live here all year around. The snow covered up the grass with their great white cloak, and the frost painted all the trees silver. Then they invited the north wind to stay with them, and he came. He was wrapped in furs, and he roared all day about the garden and blew the chimney posts down. This is a delightful spot, he said. We must ask the hail on a visit. So the hail came. Every day for 3 hours, he rattled on the roof of the castle till he broke most of the slates, and then he ran round the garden as fast as he could go. He was dressed in gray, and his breath was like ice. I cannot understand why the spring is so late in coming, said the selfish giant, as he sat at the window and looked out of his cold white garden. I hope there will be a change in the weather. But the spring never came, nor the summer. The autumn gave golden fruit to every garden, but to the giant's garden she gave none. He is too selfish, he said. So it was always winter there, and the north wind and the hail and the frost and the snow danced about through the trees. One morning the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it must be the king's musician passing by. It was really only a little linnet singing outside his window, but it was so long since he had heard a bird singing in his garden that it seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. Then the hail stopped dancing over his head, and the north wind ceased roaring, and a delicious perfume came to him through the open casement. I believe the spring has come at last, said the giant, and he jumped out of bed and looked out. What did he see? He saw a most wonderful sight. Through a little hole in the wall the children had crept in, and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. In every tree that he could see there was a little child, and the trees were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossoms and were waving their arms gently above the children's heads. The birds were flying about and twittering with delight, and the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. It was a lovely scene. Only in one corner it was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden, and it was standing a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up to the branches of the tree, and he was wandering all around, crying bitterly. The poor tree was still quite covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring above it. Climb up, little boy, said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could. But the boy was too tiny, and the giant's heart melted as he looked out. How selfish I have been, he said. Now I know why the spring would not come here. I will put that poor little boy on the top of the tree, and then I will knock down the wall, and my garden shall be the children's playground forever and ever. He was really very sorry for what he had done. So he crept downstairs and opened the front door quite softly and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened that they all ran away, and the garden became winter again. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears that he did not see the giant coming. And the giant stole up behind him and took him gently in his hand and put him in the tree. And the tree broke at once into blossom, and the birds came and sang on it, and the little boy stretched out his 2 arms and flung them around the giant's neck and kissed him. And the other children, when they saw that the giant was not wicked any longer, came running back. And when they came the spring, "It is your garden now, little children," said the giant. And he took a great axe and knocked down the wall. And when the people were going to market at 12 o'clock, they found a giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. All day long they played, and the evening they came to the giant to bid him goodbye. "But where is our little companion?" he said. "The boy I put in the tree." The giant loved him the best because he had kissed him. "We don't know," answered the children. "He has gone away." "You must tell him to be sure and come here tomorrow," said the giant. But the children said that they did not know where he lived and had never seen him before. And the giant felt very sad. Every afternoon, when school was over, the children came and played with the giant. But the little boy whom the giant loved was never seen again. The giant was very kind to all children, yet he longed for his first little friend and often spoke of him. "I would like to see him," he used to say. Years went over and the giant grew very old and feeble. He could not play about anymore, so he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children at their games and admired his garden. "I have many beautiful flowers," he said, "but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all." One winter morning, he looked out of his window as he was dressing. He did not hate the winter now, for he knew that it was merely the spring asleep and that the flowers were resting. Suddenly, he rubbed his eyes in wonder and looked. It certainly was a marvelous sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree quite covered with lovely white blossoms. Its branches were all golden, and silver fruit hung down from them, and underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. Downstairs ran the giant in great joy, and out into the garden. He hastened across the grass and came near to the child, and when he came quite close to his face grew red with anger, and he said, "Who hath dared to wound thee?" For on the palms of the child's hands were the prints of 2 nails, and the prints of 2 nails were on the little feet. "Who hath dared to wound thee?" cried the giant. "Tell me, that I may take my big sword and slay him." "Nay," answered the child, "but these are the wounds of love." "Who are those?" said the giant, and a strange awe fell on him, and he knelt before the little child. And the child smiled on the giant and said to him, "You let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise." And when the children ran in that afternoon, they found the giant lying dead under the tree, all covered with white blossoms. I have to really control myself because I usually cry when reading this. It has happened to me. It has happened to me once I had a lecture in Heredia, and when I came to the denouement, I just couldn't, my throat just kind of went to this sort of spasm. So I have to ask, I apologized. I ended somehow, I managed to end with my voice completely, distorted by emotion, Well, there are so many things, this story is. It would be considered a fable, una fábula. It is a fable. It could be considered an apólogo. An apólogo is a piece of fiction that contains a moral message. This is un apólogo. The parables in the Bible that we were talking in the last session are apólogos. Short story that contains some important moral or spiritual message. That's apólogo. A fable will usually contain a kind of a moraleja at the end, like Aesop's fables, or La Fontaine's fables, or Samaniego's fables. Many people wrote fables, So it'd be considered a fable, could be considered an apólogo, and definitely a fair tale, un cuento de hadas. because everything is fantastic, you know. Everything is fantasious, you know. There are no giants. He talks about a king. The minute you talk about a king, you place the action on some remote place, remote in space and in time, distant in time, when there were kings. I mean, we don't have kings nowadays, except, well, yeah, the British family. We're not talking about that. What kind of a king is that, my God? So, yeah, kings and giants and the season, spring, winter, autumn, fall, that play all sort of games, and the trees with golden branches and silver fruits, you know, metamorphosis of the landscape. Everything is definitely a fairy tale, you know, definitely. Did you like it? Yeah. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's beautiful. It's for all ages, you know. A kid will love these. An adolescent, an adult, an old guy like me. Is for all ages. Is that kind of literature that speaks to everybody. From the point of view etario, etario means that has to do with edad, ¿verdad? It has a very broad etario spectrum, you know? Like, what kind of text has that virtue? Well, Le Petit Prince de Saint-Exupéry, The Little Prince, El Principito. That's beautiful for children, that's beautiful for everybody, for adults, for old people, that will charm everybody. What else is like that? Platero y Yo, Juan Ramón Jiménez. That will be enjoyed by children, will be enjoyed by adults. It has so much poetry. It's poetic prose, what Neruda used to call proesia. Proesia, a blend, a hybrid between prose and poetry. And there is a little bit of proesia in this story because it's so beautiful, you know. So, you know, the first thing that when I read this story, it makes me wonder, what kind of a giant am I? Am I a selfish giant? Or am I a giant after the big epiphany, after the revelation? Am I a giant who's understood the meaning of love and now is generous and is willing to share his beautiful garden? I mean, what kind of giant are we? And then I extrapolate that question. If Costa Rica were a giant, what kind of giant is Costa Rica? I mean, are we generous? Are we open? Are we welcoming? Are we tender? Do we live in magic? Are we poetic like the giant is? Are we easy to be moved? Are we appreciative of our childhood? I mean, let's make that isomorphism, that analogy. Costa Rica, what kind of giant will that contribute? If it is a giant at all, maybe it's not even a giant. Maybe we're a dwarf. I don't know. You know, it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder. So, well, no introduction. The writer attacks the action immediately. Every afternoon, as they were coming from school, the children used to go and play in the giant's garden. Then the description, you know, it was a large, lovely garden. Now pay attention to large, lovely, so many L's. Large, lovely. You see what I tell you, that there is a lot of poetry here. You know, not explicit poetry, but implicit poetry. Large, lovely garden with soft green grass, the double G, green grass. See, you can tell that the author is choosing his words for euphonic reasons. What's euphonic? It means for euphonia, euphonia. It's something that sounds beautiful, something that sounds good. Euphonia, como eutanasia, a good death, or eugenesia, eufemismo, something that's awful but said in a beautiful way. Eufemismo, you know. So, an asylum for all people will be called Casa de Confortación. So that's an euphemism, you know. So, It was a large and lovely garden with soft green grass. Here and there over the grass stood beautiful flowers like stars. So it's a garden that has a certain cosmic dimension. The flowers were like stars, you know. The star that is the most distanced from Earth, Jesus Christ, is distant by 12,900,000 years light. If you want to go, in case you're planning to go there. 12,990,000 years at the speed of the light. It's a star that appeared when a little after the Big Bang. You know, the Big Bang is 14,000 million years old. And this star is from 12,000 million. So its light has been coming to us, has been traveling to us at the speed of the light. That's the highest speed conceivable. So dizzying. It scares me, you know. Such vast. Can you imagine if we could go a lomos de la luz, como si fuera un caballo, a lomos de la luz? Duraríamos 12,990 millones de años llegando a esa estrella. Can you imagine the size of the universe? Anyways, so there were 12 peach trees. Then in the springtime, and there were 12 peach trees. Why 12? Well, it's a number that's very frequent well, for the 12 apostles. You know, it's a number that immediately resonates a little bit with with religious imagery, doesn't it? And this is a story that has an enormous religious content. You know. Mm-hmm. It's baby Jesus at the end. Mm-hmm. It is a glorification of childhood. It is a sacralization, una sacralización de la juventud, de los niños, del mundo del niño. Es sagrado. Es sagrado desde el momento en que baby Jesus era un niño y fue un niño. Y todos los niños son, en cierto modo, Jesús niño. That's the idea of the story. So, 12 peach trees that in the springtime broke out into delicate blossoms of pink and pearl, pink and pearl, pink and pearl, pink, pink, pink. Just like lovely gardens, you know, lovely gardens, lovely gardens. And now pink and pearl. And in the autumn bore rich fruit. The birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to them. How happy we are here, they cried to each other. It is an idyllic place. It is a place that in a certain way is closed. It is self-contained. It's a self-contained little paradise, inhabited by children, by pearls, by gold, by fruits, by vegetation. You know, it's a, in a certain way, I'm going to become a little bit Freudian here. In a way, it's an intrauterine world, isn't it? It's kind of an amniotic, mundo amniotico, where the children are suspended in bliss. It's a blissful place. It's a Freudian would call it a regressus ad uterum. Regressum ad uterum, the fantasy of return to the uterus. Yes, I'm being Freudian here, and Freud is not particularly poetic about the things he says, but it rings true to me. It rings true. The birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly, sang so sweetly, sang so sweetly, sang so sweetly. You see how he's playing with sonorities, you know? He sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to them. How happy we're here, they cried to each other. One day, now, clearly, the author is introducing something terrible here. One day, the giant came back. Oh my God. You know, when the cat is not home, the mice feast. You know, cuando el gato no está en casa, los ratones hacen fiesta. The giant came back. He had been visiting his friend the Cornish ogre and had stayed with him for 7 years. After 7 years were over, he had said all he had to say, for his conversation was limited. Imagínense ustedes. Conversó durante 7 años con el ogro de Cornualles y sin embargo su conversación es limitada. Estamos a la escala de un gigante, ¿verdad? La conversación de un gigante tal vez es de 100 años, yo no lo sé. After the 7 years were over and he had said all he had to say, for his conversation was limited, and he determined to return to his own castle. When he arrived at castle, that's another element that's typical from fairy tales. Giant, king, castle, you see? When he arrived, he saw the children playing in the garden. What are you doing here? He cried in a very gruff voice. That's very interesting, beautiful. How so many words come from the principle of onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia. So many, you know. His voice was gruff, gruff, gruff. It's a word that by its very sonority tells what the kind of voice, what the timbre, what the gruff. It can only be something ugly, gruff, you know. En español, las I o las GR son atroces. Ogro, grosero, agrio, suegra, suegro, grotesco, ¿verdad? Es grr, gruñido, gruñido, grr. Sí, gruñón. My God, it is, you know, gruff, gruff, you know. Pero todas las palabras, uno dice piedra, por ejemplo. Piedra es una palabra dura. Piedra es una palabra dura, ¿verdad? Por su sonoridad. And then when Edgar Allan Poe writes The Bells, the famous poem The Bells, 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 bells. As a matter of fact, I have Edgar Allan Poe here. We can read just a few verses from Edgar Allan Poe, who happened to be here very dishonorably, lying side by side with a Coca-Cola. Very dishonorably for this great, fantastic writer. So, in his famous poem called The Bells, Edgar Allan Poe precisely does something very interesting. He doesn't talk about the bells. He doesn't make of the bells some kind of theme or subject and he develops it. No, he does something much better and much more intelligent and more sensitive. He allows the bells to speak by themselves. He gives the word, he gives the fleur to the bells so they can say themselves. Hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells. What a world of merriment their melody foretells. How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night, while the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with a crystalline delight, keeping time, time, time in a sort of running rhyme to the tintinambulation that so musically wells from the bells, 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 bells. From the jingling and the tinkling of the bells. ¡Qué maravilla! ¡Qué maravilla, juepucha! Esto es puro sonido. Es puro sonido. Tinkling of the bells, the tintinambulations, las tintinambulaciones, el retintín de las campanas, ¿verdad? Tinkle, 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 bell, 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 bell. The idea for Poe was to, again, make the presence of the bells real for us. So he gives the word to the bells. He's not describing the bells. He's basically letting the bells speak for themselves. You know, there is this little fragment of a play by Racine, great playwright, French from the Baroque, Jean Racine. So it's a place where the character one of the characters sees another character that approaches him, and the other characters, the antagonist, has a nest of vipers in his head, carrying a nest of vipers, of serpents in his head. So Orestes is the guy who sees that terrible thing. So he says, "Pour qui sont ces serpents qui sifflent sur vos têtes?" For whom are those serpents that are whistling in your head? But he says it in French. Pour qui sont ces serpents qui sifflent sur vos têtes? La sibilancia de la serpiente, la lengua bífida y rauda. And so he's very good poet. He's not saying, well, and the serpents produce a funny sound that is kind of like, shh. No, I would have done that because I'm not a good writer. But Racine was a great writer and a great poet. He wrote mostly dramas, but dramas in poetry, with rhyme and metric and all the things, you know. Pour qui sont ces serpents qui sifflent sur vos têtes? It's you know, you can hear the serpents, you know. It's very beautiful, very beautiful. What are you doing here? He cried in a very gruff voice, and the children ran away. My own garden is my own garden, said the giant. Anyone can understand it, and I will allow nobody to play in by myself. So he built a high wall round and put a notice board. Trespassers will be prosecuted. He was a very selfish giant. I adore that, you know. That's so much for kids, you know. He was a very selfish giant. Well, we already know that. But you know, he's writing for, again, it's the child inside of the writer writing for the children of the world. He has the ability to put himself at the level of the children and interpelarlos, you know, touch them in their own language. Mm-hmm. The poor children now have nowhere to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones, and they did not like it. They used to wander around the high wall when their lessons were over and talk about the beautiful garden inside. How happy we were there, they said to each other before, you know. How happy we are here. But now they're contemplating things in the past with nostalgia. How happy we were there. They have lost their paradise. They have been expelled from the intrauterine world. They have been expelled from the amniotic bliss, you know. Then the spring came, and all over the country there were little blossoms and little birds. Only in the garden of the selfish giant it was still winter. Well, the winter in the garden is a projection of the winter in his heart. Mm-hmm. I mean, he is the one who lived eternally in winter, dry, you know, avaricious, ungenerous, selfish, the winter of the heart, you know. The birds did not care to sing in it, as there were no children, and the trees forgot to blossom. Once a beautiful flower put his head out from the grass. When he saw the notice board, he was so sorry for the children that he slipped back into the ground again and went off to sleep. That's children's literature. Una florcita salió y vio aquel rótulo y no había ni... No, yo me voy de aquí. Y se metió de nuevo y se escondió. There is great tenderness in all this, you know. There is obviously enormous capacity for tenderness and empathy with the children's world. Mm-hmm. You know, Oscar Wilde is very childlike. Attention, there is a very important distinction. One thing is to be childlike, ser como un niño. Another thing is to be childish, infantiloide, aniñado, you know, impertinente, grosero, egoísta, como un chiquillo. Childish is a bad thing to be, but to be childlike is beautiful. Since biblical times, aquel que quiera entrar al reino de los cielos tendrá que ser como ese niño. Esa es una frase de las más importantes para mí de la Biblia. Pero hay que entender muy bien a qué se refiere Jesucristo como ser como ese niño. Hay que entender muy bien y meditar y explorar eso. I close my parenthesis. So, the only people who were pleased were the snow and the frost. Spring has forgotten this garden, they cried, so we will live here all year around. The snow covered up the grass with her great white cloak, and the frost painted all the trees silver. Then they invited the north wind to stay with them, and he came. He was wrapped in furs, envuelto en pieles, ¿verdad? El viento del norte. And he roared. What a great word. He roared, rugir. El español no está mal, rugir. I remember the Dylan Thomas poem, the famous Thomas poem, rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, in that lonely height, do not go gently into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Esto me eriza. It's that beautiful poem that Dylan Thomas writes for his dying father. Y le dice, no. Y tú, padre, en esa triste y solitaria cima en que estás, la soledad del que agoniza, del enfermo que siempre está solo, ¿verdad? No te dejes ir dócilmente en esa dulce noche. No, ruge, protesta por la muerte de la luz. No le dice, descanse, viejito, duérmase, ya usted cumplió su miedo. No, lo arenga, rage against that. In that poem, we will analyze it one day. We will comment it in the next session. We'll comment the famous Dylan Thomas poem, And you, my poor father, in that lonely height, do not go gentle into that good night. Rage against the dying of the light. Ruge ante la muerte de la luz. Beautiful. Well, we are here, it's clearly una personificación de las estaciones, ¿verdad? Están personificadas. Son como personajes. Lo que se llama una prosopopeya. En inglés, prosopopeia. Prosopopeia is, we have already talked about this. When we say the moon was melancholy, the rage of the sun, the fury of the sea, the nostalgia of the wind that sings in the cliffs. Well, no, the sun is certainly not. He's not an enraged, nor is the moon melancholy. Those are projections, ¿verdad? Proyecciones, la palabrilla de domingo de la vez pasada, antropopáticas. Antropopáticas, que viene del antropos, es el patos, es decir, el dolor, el sentimiento de patos del antropo, del ser humano, proyectado hacia afuera. Well, es bueno tener palabrillas así. Una proyección antropopática. Cuando yo digo, la luna está melancólica. No, la luna no está melancólica es usted. Usted está melancólico y está proyectando eso hacia la luna, ¿verdad? Entonces, es lo que se llama una prosopopía o personification, una personificación. It's a very important rhetoric device, because all poetry in the world and not good literature is filled with that. It seems like the human being wants to contaminate the whole cosmos with its humanity. So the moon it's melancholy, and the sun is furious, and the wind is singing, So all these seasons, they talk among them are onomatopoeias, proyecciones antropopáticas, anthropopathic projections. They invited the north wind with capital, north wind, as if it was a character, North wind, as it Jacksagot, north wind with capitals. They invited the north wind to stay with them, and he came. He was wrapped in furs, and he roared all day about the garden and blew the chimney posts down. This is the delightful spot, he said. We must ask the hail on a visit. Entonces, uno invita al otro, que invita al otro, que invita al otro, ¿verdad? Entonces, ya vino el viento del norte que está invitando el granizo, the hail. Y se invitan unos a otros. Eso es muy de los cuentos de infancia, ¿verdad? Mucho, mucho. Y el ratoncito y la cucarachita mandinga, ¿me quieres? Mu, dijo el burro, no, porque... Y se va acumulando, ¿verdad? No, porque la palomita murió cuando yo, y al canal aplastó al perrito que aplastó al buey, y el buey se quejó. Se va construyendo una narrativa por efecto de acumulación, accumulation. That is typical of the fairy stories, of the stories for children, those accumulations, in part because they help to develop memory for children. They are very useful in that sense. But then you have accumulated so many things, la cucarachita mandinga, ¿verdad? ¿Cuántos? Y se repite, los niños juegan memorizando. It's very good, it's very nice, that resource. Well, it's the same thing we have here. So the hail came. Every day for 3 hours he rattled, ¿verdad? Like a rattlesnake. Una serpiente de cascabel, rattle, el granizo, rattling en los techos, ¿verdad? Another onomatopoeia, rattled, Every day for 3 hours he rattled on the roof of the castle till he broke most of the slates, and then he ran round. And then he round and round, and then he ran round. All that is beautiful. All that is more music than literature in a certain way. And I'm gonna read to you a very simple little verse from Edgar Allan Poe, where he has tremendous fun with reiterating certain sonorities. This is called To Helen. It's very close. We don't have to read the whole thing. To Helen. Helen, thy beauty is to me like those Nician barks of yore, that gently o'er a perfumed sea the weary wayward wanderer bore. The weary wayward wanderer bore. That's wonderful. It's wonderful. El caminante erosionado por las largas caminadas, eso es lo que está diciendo. The weary, el cansado, wayward, gastado por las caminatas, wanderer, caminante, bore, que arrastra su fatiga. The weary, wayward, wanderer, bore. Es hasta difícil de decir, ¿verdad? The weary, wayward, wanderer, bore. Well, so much in poetry and in good prose like this one, so much has to do with that, with the sound of things. Every day for 3 hours he rattled on the roof of the castle till he broke most of the slates, and then he ran round and round the garden as fast as he could go. He was dressed in gray, and his breath was like ice. Personificación, el granizo vestido de gris, ¿verdad? I cannot understand why the spring is so late in coming, said the selfish giant as he sat at the window and looked out of his cold white garden. I hope there will be a change in the weather. But the spring never came, nor the summer. The autumn gave golden fruit to every garden, but to the giant's garden she gave none. Notice that the autumn is feminine in English. She, the autumn, she. La otoña. She gave none. He's too selfish, he said. She said, the autumn. So it was always winter there, and the north wind and the hail and the frost and the snow dance about through the trees. Now, Oscar Wilde is using here, and again, a figure, a rhetorical procedure that's called, another Sunday word, polysyndeton. That's don't get scared with that. Polysyndeton es una palabra griega, polysyndeton, significa muchos nudos. Polysyndeton, síndeton es nudo. El contrario es asíndeton, no tiene nudos. A, como en apolítico, abstemio, apático, ¿verdad? La partícula A es negación, pero polysíndeton que tiene muchos nudos. Porque aquí el nudo es la I, es la conjunción I, ¿verdad? And the north wind and the half hail and the frost and the snow dance about through the trees. And. Pudo haber puesto comas y evitar la partícula conectiva and, que es un puro connective tissue. But it wouldn't have been beautiful, because the reiteration and, it makes the text more poetic. Now I will read you again from Edgar Allan Poe, and another beautiful use of polysyndeton in the wonderful story, The Mask of the Red Death. At the end, he uses polysyndeton, and it's very beautiful. Now see, the use of the and gives a character of a litany. Es como una letanía. E. And as and now was acknowledged the presence of the Red Death. He had come. The Red Death is a man. He, not she, he. He had come like a thief in the night, and one by one dropped the revelers in the blood-bedewed halls of their revel, and died in the despairing posture of his fall, and the life of the ebony clock went out with that of the last of the day, and the flames of the tripod expired, and darkness and decay, and the Red Death held the illimitable dominion over all. And, it's tremendo.
It seems to keep the children's attention also.
Yeah.
And his and
You're right.
So they don't distract.
It feels like if you're waiting for something else, like another end coming.
Yeah.
What are you going to say after that?
Yeah, exactly. It builds a little expectation upon what's coming. And it sounds very beautiful. And. So that thing is called polysyndeton. We will have a quiz. Next time. No quizzes here. Here all is joy and pleasure. One morning the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it must be the king's musician passing by. Another allusion at the childhood world, the fairy tale, the king and his orchestra that passes by. It was really only a little linnet singing outside the window, but it was so long since he had heard a bird sing in his garden that it seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. Then the hail stopped dancing over his head, and the north wind ceased roaring, and the delicious perfume came to him through the open casement. I believe the spring has come at last, said the giant, and he jumped out of bed and looked out. What did he see? He saw a most wonderful sight. Through a little hole in the wall, the children had crept in, and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. And every tree that he could see, there was a little child, as if in a certain way, the children were the tree's fruits. The children are like the fruits of the trees. And the trees were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossoms and were waving their arms gently above the children's heads. The birds were flying about and twittering in delight with their twittering, twittering, onomatopeya, ¿verdad? El tweet, ¿verdad? Tweet, lo que hace un pajarito. A bird is going to roar. A lion will roar. But the bird can only tweet, Cantar, gorjear, sí. Twittering with delight, and the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. It was a lovely scene. Only in one corner it was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden, and in it was standing a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up to the branches of the tree, and he was wandering all around it, crying bitterly. The poor tree was still quite covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring above it. Climb up, little boy, said the tree, and it bent his branches down as low as I could, but the boy was too tiny. So there is an interrelationship, very intimate, very strong. The trees will only flourish and give fruits if they have children on their branches. All the beauty of nature is possible thanks to the presence of children. I mean, Oscar Wilde is given an enormous importance to the children. They are the owners of magic, the owners of poetry, the owners of beauty. This story is an enormous homage to childhood in the most beautiful sense of the word. And the giant's heart melted as he looked out. How selfish I have been. He said, now I know why the spring would not come here. I will put that poor little boy on the top of the tree, and then I will knock down the wall, and my garden shall be the children's playground forever and ever. He was really very, very sorry for what he had done. So he crept downstairs and opened the front door quite softly and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened, they all ran away. Como una bandada de pajaritos, todos, y claro, salió el gigante horroroso, ¿verdad? And the garden became winter again. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears that he did not see the giant coming. And the giant stole behind him and took him gently in his hands and put him up into the tree. And the tree broke at once into blossom. Blossom, what a beautiful word. Blossom, explosive, blossom. Una explosión de flores y de verdor. Blossom. I mean, there is no question. We're dealing here with a man who knew very damn well the English language, the sonic potentialities of every word, And the birds came and sang on it, and the little boy stretched out his two arms and flung them round the giant's neck and kissed him. And the other children, when they saw that the giant was no wicked any longer, came running back. And with them came the spring. It is your garden now, little children, said the giant. And he took a great axe and knocked down the wall. And when the people were going to market at 12 o'clock, they found the giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. I wish I was a painter to paint this, That giant, that enormous being, menacing. A giant will always be menacing, even if he's good. I mean, he's just too big not to inspire some fear, And that monster playing with all those little kids, especially the tiny kid that could not reach the branches, It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, the character in this story that undergoes the great transformation is the giant. He is the place where the great revelation occurs. He is the place. All day long they played, and in the evening they came to the giant to bid him goodbye. But where is your little companion, he said. The boy I put into the tree. The giant loved him the best because he had kissed him. Poor giant. I mean, you can tell he received very few kisses in his life, So that one kiss of that little kid totally ensorcelled him, totally gained his heart. Perhaps he had never been kissed before. We have no news of a giantess. No hay ninguna giganta por ningún lado. Tal vez era la primera vez que lo besaban en su vida al pobre. ¿Verdad?
He lives alone.
He lives alone, and he goes visit the ogre of Cornouages, and just, and...
There is no mention of anybody giving maintenance to the garden during those 7 years.
Yeah, right.
And not even when he comes back.
There is no mention whatsoever of a person that could have been crucial, a gardener. There is no gardener in this garden. It's like the change of the season suffices to keep the garden, beautiful. Ever-changing, but beautiful. We don't know, answered the children. He has gone away. You must tell him to be sure and come here tomorrow, said the giant. But the children said that they did not know where he lived and had never seen him before. And the giant felt very sad. So the kid is a mystery even for his fellow kids, You must tell him to be sure and come here tomorrow, said the giant. But the children said that they didn't know where he lived and had never seen him before. And the giant felt very sad. Every afternoon when school was over, the children came and played with the giant. But the little boy whom the giant loved was never seen again. The giant was very kind with all the children, yet he longed for his first little friend and often spoke of him. How I would like to see him, he used to say. Oh, there is a bond. There is a very strong bond that the giant has created with the little boy. He loves all children. But that little boy, the tiniest of them all, I mean, he just gained his heart. He gained his heart. There's a bond, you know. Years went by, and the giant grew very old and feeble. He could not play about anymore. He could not play about anymore. And he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children at their games and admired his garden. I have many beautiful flowers, he said, but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all. So there is this. It's like the children and the flowers or the fruit are the same thing. And what is that thing? Is the push of life. Is the blossoming of life. Is everything that represents life. The children, the flowers, and the fruit. The giant is just enamored with life, with the forces of life, not with the forces of death. The winter, the hail, the wind north, the north wind, those are forces of death. No, but he's in love with the forces of life. One winter morning, now we can tell immediately that something is going to happen, you know. Like one winter morning, it's casi érase una vez. Once upon a time, now we can tell that something is going to happen, you know. One winter morning, he looked out of his window as he was dressing. He did not hate the winter now, for he knew that it was merely the spring asleep and the flowers were resting. Amazing prosopopeias, you know. But the spring doesn't sleep, you know, nor the flowers rest, except in the poetic world of the writer, of the poet-writer. Suddenly, he rubbed his eyes in wonder and looked and looked. It certainly was a marvelous sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree quite covered with lovely white blossoms. White. The meaning of white, the symbology of white. Purity, spirit, the soul, white. Chastity, white, you know. You can already tell, you know, the approaching death of the giant or somebody, because Wilde could have said red flowers, but no, white flowers, the kind of flowers you would take to a cemetery, perhaps. Its branches were all golden, and silver fruit hung down from them, and underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. Downstairs ran the giant in great joy. He barely could walk, but he was still running. You know, that's how overflown by emotion he was. He hastened across the grass and came near to the child. And when he came quite close, his face grew red with anger. And he said, "Who hath dared to wound thee?" For one of the palms of the child's hands were prints of 2 nails, 2 clavos, 2 nails. And nails es también uñas, pero también es clavos, ¿verdad? And the prints of 2 nails were on the little feet. Aquí yo me empiezo a sobrecoger. Nunca olvidaré cuando leí esto por primera vez. Estaba solo en mi estudio, viernes en la noche. Y cuando llegué aquí, los escalofríos me corrían para abajo y para arriba, para abajo, para arriba, por la espalda, como si estuviera conectado a una batería galvánica. No fue un escalofrío, era uno y subían y bajaban y subían y bajaban. Y yo, oh, un momento, me voy a morir aquí. ¿Qué va a pasar, verdad? "Who hath dared to wound thee?" cried the giant. "Tell me, that I may take my big sword and slay him." Well, of course, a giant's sword has to be enormous, you know. "Nay," answered the child, "but these are the wounds of love." "Who art thou?" said the giant. And a strange awe fell on him, and he knelt before the little child. Awe, a feeling of awe, sobrecogimiento, pasmo, no miedo, sobrecogimiento. Cuando sentías que estás de frente de algo que es enorme, una catedral gótica, ¿verdad? Y cae de rodillas. And the child smiled at the giant and said to him, "You let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise." Ese es el trueque, ¿verdad? Un trueque como entre niños. Vos me dejaste jugar una vez en tu jardín. Hoy te voy a llevar yo a jugar a mi jardín, que es el paraíso. Y la última frase es tan visual, tan visual. And when the children ran in the afternoon, they found the giant lying dead under the tree, all covered with white blossoms. Qué final más lindo. Es una foto, ¿verdad? Es un cuadro. Del gigante egoísta se han hecho todo. Ballets, cartoons, varios, animation de varios tipos digitales, óperas, adaptaciones teatrales, todo lo que se quieran imaginar se han hecho. Varios cartoons se han hecho. Yo primero conocí este cuento en un cartoon, en el año 77, cielo santo, qué viejo estoy. En diciembre del 77 fue que vi ese cartoon. Estaba muy enfermo yo. Me estaban pasando una transfusión y estaba viendo y vi las fábulas y recuerdo al final el gigante yaciendo al pie del árbol y seguían cayendo los pétalos blancos sobre él, ¿verdad? El color blanco asume una importancia enorme al final. El blanco, ¿verdad? Es la cobija que merecía el gigante, una cobija de pétalos blancos por su bella alma, por su bello corazón. And when the children ran that afternoon, they found the giant lying dead under the tree. You see, he puts the giant lying dead under the tree. He first puts lying dead under the tree. Oscar Wilde tries to downplay a little bit the ugliness of the notion of death. You know, lying, reposando, death under the trees, all covered with white blossoms. And blossoms is a beautiful word for its sonority to end. All covered with white blossoms. You know, vamos, blossoms. It's a very beautiful final chord, isn't it? I mean, other words would not have done the job. But blossoms. Blossoms.
It's very special for children.
Also.
Tell the children he died
in a beautiful way. It's a very beautiful, poetic way of conceiving death. I mean, basically, the giant just is asleep at the feet of the tree, covered with white blossoms that keep falling slowly and slowly and beautifully over his body. One has the feeling that he's resting, sleeping rather than dead. So, I mean, my question again is the same. How can a story like this touch so much children as adults? You are touched. I can tell you're very touched, and I'm happy because that's what I chose this story. Como les digo, la primera vez que lo leí yo me puse a llorar, fue terrible. Perdón, estoy muy emocionado y abrí un paréntesis. Sé dónde me pasó esto. No answered the child. Estas son las heridas del amor. Ahí se me cerró la garganta, perdonen. Y paré, un ridículo porque tenía una clase delante de mí. Me emocionó mucho. Evidentemente que es un cuento muy lleno del imaginario religioso, las flores blancas, ¿verdad? El niño Jesús que aparece con las llagas en las manitas y en los pies. Y el gigante, ¿quién te hizo eso? Tomaré mi espada descomunal e iré a matarlo. Y el niño lo calma. No. Estas son las heridas del amor. Qué bella manera de concebir las heridas de Cristo como heridas de amor. Qué bella manera. No sé si sea cierto o no, pero es muy bello. Y yo tiendo a creer en lo que es bello, ¿verdad? Siento que lo que es bello porque es verdadero. Una mentira nunca es bella. Siempre se le siente la, ¿verdad?
Y hay que usar también para la parte de la presencia, porque dice que el árbol tiene sus ramas doradas y le cuelgan frutas
plateadas, sí.
Da una idea muy de metal, pero muy de realeza también.
De realeza y también de iglesia, de altar, ¿verdad? El ostensorio sería de metal dorado, la campanita sería plateada. Hay montones de iconografía con metales preciosos. La catedral de Chartres está forrada en oro por dentro. Entonces también forma parte del imaginario eclesiástico también, ¿verdad? Esos árboles son realeza, porque el dorado es el color de la realeza. Tienes toda la razón, Fabio. Pero también comparte el imaginario religioso o místico o eclesiástico, como quieran verlo. Este es un gran cuento de lectura religiosa. Recuerdo que uno de los viejos a los que les estaba hablando, para mí el cuento, y usó esta palabra horrible, el cuento se cursiliza, ve qué verbo. Yo me cursilizo, tú te cursilizas. Para mí el cuento se cursiliza cuando aparece que resulta que es el niño Jesús. Bueno, ¿qué voy a hacer? Si te parece cursi, pues para vos era cursi. No le dije nada, no discutí nada. No se puede con gente así. Realmente, como diría Cristo, para entender este cuento hay que ser como un niño, porque le habla al niño dentro de nosotros. Ese es el que se conmueve, ese es el que entiende este cuento.
Para mí significaba, yo soy ateo. Yo he leído mucho la Biblia, comprendo todo, ¿verdad? Y la Biblia, es porque soy ateo. Pero yo comprendo que aquí el mensaje es como un tema de redención. ¿Okay? Al final hubo un redemption para el gigante, que logró olvidar y superar su selfishness, ¿verdad?
Egoísmo.
Su egoísmo y aprender a compartir, como una conversión.
Sí, en cierto modo. En cierto modo, esa es una buena palabra.
Ese egoísmo es una falta de amor.
Y tuvo su redención.
Total.
Fue redimido por el niño, ¿verdad? Que tiene esas heridas por él, para redimirlo a él, al gigante. Por eso tiene esas heridas.
Cambió un poquito, digamos, la infancia de uno, que creció un poco más abierto, ¿no? En el campo, yendo a los vecinos, y siempre había un vecino que no le gustaba. A mí me recuerda un poco.
Sí, en todas las cuadras había un ogro, ¿verdad? Había un ogro y había una damadrina y había de todo, y había una bruja. Siempre había una bruja, la bruja como la del Chavo del Ocho. En todo vecindario había una bruja. Eso es parte de mi infancia, ¿verdad? Sí, no, el vecindario estaba incompleto cuando habían vecindarios, amigos, y ahora lo que hay son condominios y torres descomunales donde nadie conoce quién está par y si se muere no se entera nadie. Una amiga muy linda, ya murió, Brunilda de Portilla, que nació en La Cruz, en Guanacaste, allá, murió casi centenaria. Me decía que en los 30s, en La Cruz, Guanacaste, lo que había eran grandes haciendas, caserones, separados por potreros, y que la luz blanqueaba, como Liberia, blanqueaba las piedritas. Entonces era una luz, eran noches como muy blancas cuando estaba la luna. Y decía, Jack, en mi casa no se cerraba la puerta de noche. Nadie cerraba las puertas, porque justamente tenían que estar abiertas por si algún vecino tenía una emergencia, que entrara a buscar lo que fuera una taza de azúcar, que estuviera enfermo, que necesitaba asistencia de algo. Entonces la gente dormía con las puertas abiertas. Esa era la Costa Rica de 1930. Hoy, dormir con las puertas abiertas.
Cuando amanece ya no hay nada en la casa.
¿Te imaginas, corazón?
No, ni usted queda. Ni usted queda.
Ni yo. No. Dormir con una puerta abierta. ¿Cuántas rejas se usan hoy en día? Un portón de metal y después las rejas en las ventanas y una puerta enrejada y otra reja en la puerta donde ya uno entra. Por todo lado y jardines y líneas de alambres de púas y cámaras por todas partes. Vivimos en arresto domiciliario los costarricenses y creemos que así es por todo en el mundo. Los 7 años que vivíamos en Francia, en París eran más precavidos, pero cuando uno se iba al lado de la provincia, las casas no tenían, las ventanas no tenían rejas.
En el campo todavía algo se conserva.
Pues no sé dónde, amiga. Pero eso era La Cruz en esas épocas. La gente dormía con las puertas abiertas para atender a un vecino si hubiera alguna emergencia, ¿verdad? Qué cosa, ¿verdad? Qué lejana parece esa Costa Rica, ¿verdad? Pareciera del periodo Jurásico. Ya es inconcebible hoy en día. ¿Le gustó el cuento, amiguita?
Sí, mucho.
Sí.
El Príncipe Feliz me lo leía mi mamá.
Es muy lindo El Príncipe Feliz. Ese es el que le da el título a la colección. El Príncipe Feliz y otros cuentos. Nosotros ya leímos un cuento de esta colección, The Nightingale and the Rose, El ruiseñor y la rosa. Nightingale and the Rose. Yo me recuerdo que a Lily le gustó mucho. ¿Recuerdan? El ruiseñor que se estreja el corazón contra una espina para que su sangre tiña de rojo una rosa blanca, para que el estudiante tuviera una rosa roja que ofrecerle a la hija del chambelán, a la muchacha a la que iba a seducir. Y la muchacha le dice, ¿qué es eso? ¿Tú no tienes hebillas de plata como el hijo del chambelán? Yo no me voy a conformar con una rosa. Y la tiró en un caño. Y para colmo le pasó un carruaje encima a la rosa. Y aquella rosa le había costado la vida al ruiseñor. Ese cuento es tremendo también. Es tremendo, tremendo, ¿verdad? Bueno, ahí tenés una metáfora, una alegoría de lo mal comprendido que se sintió Oscar Wilde en su amor por Sir Alfred Douglas. Él siempre sintió que Bosie, su amante, Alfred Douglas, no entendía realmente la hondura de su amor. Bosie era como la chica esta. ¿Para qué? No tienes hebillas de plata como el hijo del chambelán. Hoy en día sería, ¿para qué? ¿No tenés un Lamborghini descapotable? ¿Por qué voy a hacerte caso? El otro baboso tiene un Lamborghini, porque me voy con el de Lamborghini. Si lo adaptamos, ¿verdad? Ya no sería hebillas de plata, pero un Lamborghini, un Jaguar, qué sé yo, no sé nada de carros. Nunca he sabido de nada. Pero sí, sí, ese cuento era terrible. Te deja con una sensación de... El ruiseñor dio su vida por aquello, pero como dice Lily, como Lily nos dijo en esa ocasión, el ruiseñor sabía lo que hacía, aceptó hacerlo y lo hubiera hecho de nuevo, si tuviera que hacerlo. Porque no era el fin práctico, era el hecho de morir por el amor. En sí, ya, no fue del todo un desperdicio. Bueno, tan no lo fue que le motivó a Oscar Wilde un cuento. Entonces, el cuento es que le da sentido al sacrificio del ruiseñor. Teñir una rosa con la propia sangre de uno, ¿se imaginan ustedes? Eso es tremendo. Y claro, es una alegoría también de lo que hace el poeta, de lo que hace el artista. Tiñe sus obras con la sangre de su propio. ¿Para qué? Para que después nadie las vea, nadie las compre, nadie les interese, la tiren a un caño, ¿verdad? Oscar Wilde, este cuento también es una hermosa alegoría de lo que es el artista. Entonces vuelvo a la gran pregunta, ¿qué somos nosotros? ¿Gigantes egoístas o gigantes conversos? Después de que comprendió.
Pienso que depende un poco de la edad. Y uno más jovencillo y más egoísta. Pues se espera que sea menos egoísta.
Sí.
Con la edad.
Sí. Qué horrible es el egoísmo. Y lo he padecido mucho. Ni crean que voy a pretender que yo sé. Yo no sé si yo soy el gigante después de la conversión. Algunas cosillas sí, pero creo que en otras soy el gigante.
Algo se va madurando.
Alguito. Y lo que no se madura se pudre, como decía
Fue lo que conversó con el ogro, a ver si fue que también algo de esa conversión durante 7 años lo cambió.
No, el ogro sería un HDP igual que él, el ogro de Cornualles, 7 años hablando, nada más 7 años. Y se cansó porque su conversación era limitada, solo daba para 7 años. Pobrecito, ¿verdad? En un ogro todo es así, ¿verdad? En un gigante. Hay una diferencia entre gigante y ogro, ¿verdad? El gigante es un gigante, el ogro come chiquitos. Es un caníbal.
El ogro es malo.
Es malo.
Puede que no.
Puede que no, ¿verdad? Aquí no se puede concebir un ogro converso. El ogro es inherentemente malo, ¿verdad?
Is it to Shrek?
Well, Shrek is a nice ogre. Shrek is a very nice ogre, but it took Walt Disney like 80 years to come out with a nice ogre. So that tells you how difficult it is to conceive. But that's a nice point. Shrek is a very nice ogre. In fact, Shrek has changed in children's mind the whole conception of the word ogre. ¿No? En mi infancia el ogro era algo espantoso, el ogro de todos los cuentos, ¿verdad? La primera vez que yo fui a ver el cine, primera película, tendría yo 2 añillos y pico, era una versión de Pulgarcito mexicana, donde salía el ogro y, en fin, Hace poco la vi y me pareció tan mala, pero sí, tan malísima, malísima, con una cancioncilla que cantaban lava, 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 porque hacia el ogro se hará bueno. Esa cancioncilla se me pegó toda la vida. Como yo soy músico, ahí la tengo en mi cabeza. La vi malísima versión. ¡Wow! Más mala, por el amor de Dios. Así que eso vi. Sí, el truco de pulgarcito, no sé cómo hacían, lo reducían como si le dieran chiquitolina. Así diminutillo, ves la silla enorme y pulgarcito. No sé si construyeron una silla enorme, tal vez, para que no sé en qué consistió el truco, ¿verdad? Eso estaba bien hecho para la época, ¿verdad? Que habrá sido 64, 65, cuando me llevaron a ver. Vivía en Atillo yo todavía, en Atillo 1. Qué mundo, ¿verdad?
Oye, ¿qué con música?
Estoy con el bracito derecho mal. Sí, Fabito. Sí, estoy recuperándome. Si no, claro, debería haber comenzado y terminado como sea. Pero si me disculpan por hoy, mientras el bracito se termina de componer, acuérdense que yo soy hemofílico. Entonces tengo lesiones que toman su rato, ¿verdad? En componerse. Y no quiero forzarlo.
No es que se le ha olvidado.
No, podemos oír algo suavecito. No, sí. Muchas gracias. ¿Ah? Sí, no puedo, a cosas más demandantes no puedo tocarlas, pero yo les había contado a ustedes que este intervalo, que es el intervalo de tercera menor, es el que usan todas las mujeres en el mundo, all over the world, para arrullar a sus niños. Es un hecho antropológico, está en la fisiología humana. Instintivamente, los papúas de Nueva Guinea, como un señor que vive en un piso 100 en Nueva York, todas las mujeres arrullan a sus niños con ese intervalo. La etnomusicología ha descubierto eso. Qué interesante, ¿verdad? Es que ese intervalo es sedativo. Y los grandes compositores que son anteriores a la etnomusicología, por instinto, cuando componían canciones de cuna, usaban siempre ese intervalo, ¿verdad? Como que todo el mundo sabía sin saber que si yo me pongo a tocar en 10 minutos están dormidos todos. Los duermo a todos, tengo esos poderes. Ya estamos, ¿verdad, Lili?
Ya estamos, son.
Qué alegría verlos, amigos. Ustedes no pueden faltar nunca. Imposible. Giselita no puede faltar porque ella es vocera, apoderada, secretaria, agente de prensa, promotora, asesora de imagen.
Por eso le cambiamos la camiseta.
Fabito no puede faltar. Y ahora esta amiga, decime tu nombre. Shalaisha. Qué lindo nombre, Shalaisha. Eso lo había podido inventar Oscar Wilde, Shalaisha. That's very poetic. Siga llegando, corazón. No, que está invitada aquí, que lo que tenemos de hoy en 8, ¿quién va? Carlos Salas Herreras.
Víctor Hugo.
Ah, Víctor Hugo, eso va a estar bueno. Lo vamos a leer en traducción al español. No se preocupen, no lo vamos a leer en francés. Pues alguna francesada me echaré por aquí o por allá, pero lo vamos a leer en español.
Víctor Hugo, poemas diversos.
Sí.
So today I'm going to switch again, but we're going to do the Spanglish.
True.
Thank you for coming today.
Very much, it's my
and thank you
pleasure.
for that beautiful, beautiful story.
Oh, isn't it something?
I hope we honestly become less of giants or we reflect on it, because we
Yeah.
tend to be giants at all age.
Yes, true.
So it is, but it's amazingly beautiful the way the images come to life, and it's full. Even though the giant is selfish, his kindness and what he brings to the children at the end is quite beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yes.
I mean, the giant, what he learns is how to love.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy didn't know how to love.
Yeah.
And he learned it. It's a beautiful story for that.
Beautiful story. And thank you everybody for coming to the Mark Twain Library. You're more than welcome to
Amigos,
always come.
I have here,
Join us.
before we go, I have here 5 books of my own authorship.
Oh, nice.
¿Alguien quiere tener estas obras inmortales de la historia de la literatura
Pero después
universal?
venís y las contás acá, porque tenés que un día de estos poner uno de tus...
Ay, siempre soy muy púdico para poner mis propias historias.
Pero
Cuestan 5,000 por libro. Y aquí tengo estos 2, que creo que es mi mejor libro y el que peor se ha vendido, pero así suele suceder. Y todo lo que quieran, cosas oídas en la calle, no sé, lo que quieran. Estos son...
¿Cuál recomienda usted?
Sí, no sé, corazón, diría yo.
Ese ya lo tengo.
Para ver.
Aquí tienes Shalaisha.
Shalaisha.
Beautiful.
Le puedo
Que
hacer
venir
cinco.
autografiado, si no, no
Pues
va.
claro que sí.
Le puedo hacer 5.
Sí, claro, podés, amiguito. Este te lo puedo recomendar.
Puedes hacer.
Pero no le trajo a la biblioteca, porque ya me quitaron todo, me tiene que traer más.
Esos son ensayitos. Esos ensayitos.
Su número.
A mi número de teléfono, ahí me puedes 5,000.
Sí, yo también se lo paso por simple.
Bueno,
¿Tiene
corazón.
poesía?
Lo que más se acerca a la poesía es prosa poética y es el que tiene, I don't know, tal vez, no. Es el que tiene Giselita. Sí.
Tiene otros.
No, pero te puedo traer la próxima. Gracias,
Puedo
amiguito.
venir el 30, el 23, no puedo.
Pero sigue trayendo.
Sí, yo lo sigo trayendo, sí, claro que sí.